So imagine waking up one day with absolutely nothing. I mean, zero money, no family, literally no future. The streets are cold, and it feels like society has already completely written you off. But then, out of nowhere, a guy in a sharp suit with tattoos crawling up his neck walks right up to you. And he doesn't offer you a job. No, he offers you something way, way more intoxicating to a desperate 17-year-old. He offers you a place to belong.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're climbing Rising Sun, the ranks of the Yakuza. We are going to walk step by step through the intense psychological reality of Japan's most feared criminal empire. We're going from sweeping the floors all the way to ruling the city. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive right into this. Put yourself in these shoes. You're 17 years old, wandering the gritty back alleys of Osaka in the 1990s. You failed school. Your dad took off. Your mom is working 3 different jobs just to scrape by. But then, after surviving a street fight outside a pachinko parlor, a low-level Yakuza member buys you a meal. You say yes to that one meal, and just like that, the door to your old life slams shut and the climb begins.
Phase 1. The allure of the streets. Going from a street punk to a young member.
Right, so your journey kicks off at the absolute bottom. You're a Chinpira, which literally translates to a street punk. At this stage, you are less than nobody. But if you manage to survive 6 months without getting arrested or killed, you graduate. You partake in the sakazupi. This is the sacred sake cup ceremony. You drink from the exact same cup as your boss, and in that defining, incredibly ritualistic moment, you become a Wakashu, a young member. The organization doesn't just employ you anymore, they own you. Now, you might be thinking it's all flashy suits and fast cars right away. Nope. The day-to-day reality of life at the bottom is beautifully unglamorous. You are out there collecting 50,000 yen debts just by showing up at someone's door. Looking scary is literally your only job. You're sleeping in this tiny, cramped apartment with 4 other guys, eating cheap convenience store rice balls, and wearing an awful, ill-fitting suit. But for a desperate kid who came from nothing, the fear you inspire in people feels exactly like respect. Fear becomes your only currency.
So, how do you justify this to yourself psychologically? Well, you learn the code of Ninkyo. This is the traditional Yakuza code of chivalry. The early members really cling to this idea. They truly believe they're these honorable outlaws, like modern-day samurai who just happen to choose the wrong path. It's this incredibly powerful psychological justification that keeps you marching forward when things get super dark.
And this brilliantly illustrates the lethal reality lurking right beneath that romantic samurai myth. Imagine your senior, your Aniki, hands you a taped-up package and gives you exactly one rule. Never ask what's inside. Never. In this world, curiosity isn't seen as a trait of the ambitious. Actually, scratch that. Curiosity is a fatal flaw. You learn to follow orders blindly, no questions asked.
Moving on to Phase 2, the burden of middle management, from junior leader up to lieutenant.
So fast forward about 3 years. You've proven yourself. You've literally taken beatings meant for your boss, and, most importantly, you kept your mouth shut. You get promoted to Shatei, a younger brother, and now you've got your own small crew of street punks looking up to you. Eventually, you grind your way up to lieutenant. Now you're the absolute crucial bridge between the raw street-level muscle and the high-level executives.
At this level, the power is just intoxicating. You're running a protection racket for, say, 6 restaurants in your district. You're collecting thick envelopes of cash every single month from owners who give you these nervous, terrified smiles. But man, there is a heavy catch. You are now the guy who has to clean up the messes. When one of your young, reckless street punks goes out and assaults the wrong person, that is entirely on you to fix before it blows up into an absolute disaster for the clan.
As you keep moving up, the raw street hustle starts to evolve into legitimate fronts. As a lieutenant, you're suddenly overseeing construction companies, real estate offices, staffing agencies. You're sitting at actual boardroom tables, attending proper corporate meetings, and wearing watches that cost more than the apartment you grew up in. But a really cold truth starts to set in here. You realize the criminal empire is just complicated, highly lethal corporate management.
Phase 3. The gilded cage of leadership. Transitioning from underboss to senior advisor. Okay, you finally made it to the executive suite. As Wakagashira, or underboss, you are officially second in command. When the boss isn't in the room, you are the room. And if you somehow manage to survive long enough, you might even become a psycho Koman, a senior advisor. At this elite rank, you aren't just managing operations anymore. You are the living, breathing history of the clan.
You're the one brokering peace and advising the next generation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the horrifying psychological reality of this level. You are completely trapped. You cannot just submit a 2-week notice and quit. Your wife suffers sleepless nights worrying if you'll come home. Your kids, they have to attend school under fake names just to stay safe. The money at this point is astronomical, but at this height, power and prison become the exact same corridor. You're just walking in different directions.
So, what happens if you do want to leave? Well, here is the visceral, bloody cost. Yubitsume. This is the brutal ritual act of severing your own finger as a massive apology, or to officially cut ties with the clan. Even with all the insane power and wealth of an underboss, this bloody sacrifice is the stark, horrifying reality of trying to escape that gilded cage. And the truly scary part? They never fully let you go anyway.
As a senior advisor, you sit around listening to these younger members who are desperate to modernize. They want to get into cybercrime, cryptocurrency, the whole digital shebang. But you look at them and tell them, the moment we stop being Japanese, we stop being Yakuza. That quote right there perfectly captures the massive internal friction that is tearing the syndicate apart today. It's this huge clash between ancient, blood-soaked traditions and the sterile, digital efficiency of modern crime.
Which brings us to our final chapter. Phase 4, the boss and the decline. The Oyabun and the changing world.
You made it. You are the Oyabun, the boss, the ultimate father figure of the clan. But standing up here at this incredibly lonely peak, you realize something pretty depressing. You are no longer a warrior. You're a politician. Your entire life now is solely dedicated to managing colossal egos, settling violent internal disputes, protecting the clan's reputation, and constantly dodging relentless government crackdowns.
Sitting at the head of that massive table, your mind inevitably drifts back. You think about that 17-year-old boy, freezing and shivering in the alley outside the pachinko parlor all those years ago. If you could somehow go back in time, what would you tell him? Honestly? Just one word. Don't. You realize the entire agonizing climb was a mistake you can never, ever undo. And the worst part is, that desperate kid wouldn't have listened to you anyway.
And the real tragedy for this boss? The empire you finally inherited is fading away. The old way, the one built on samurai mythology, ninkyo, honor, and chivalry, is just being completely erased by a new reality. A reality of pure profit, boring spreadsheets, and crypto wallets. The Yakuza is rapidly, almost inevitably, losing its core identity in the modern world.
So, the crucial point is, just look at the absolute devastation in these numbers. At their absolute peak back in the 1960s, the Yakuza boasted over 180,000 members. That is a massive army. Today, they're down to under 25,000, and trust me, that number is still falling. Stricter laws and a shifting society have absolutely decimated the ranks. You survive the brutal climb to the top, only to realize you are overseeing a dying, crumbling empire. Look, every single person in this world makes a choice to belong somewhere, instead of nowhere. That's just human nature. But looking back at all the blood, the constant fear, the lost fingers, and that ultimate feeling of being trapped at the very top, you just lived an entire life in the Yakuza. So I want to leave you with this one question to think about. Was the climb actually worth the view?